Welcome everyone to the episode of the Old Timers Comic Book Show. I'm your host, as always, joining the machine Hughes, and surviving the Comic Con and the first week of preseason in the NFL is, of course, the 13th Crusader, and of course, the Professor.
What's up, Johnny? How are you?
Gentlemen, how are your con experiences?
It's good. It's always good hooking up with 13 and having a little fun, standing in lines and stuff.
All right,
Yeah.
okay, cool.
Yeah.
How was the social distance element?
There was zero social distancing, so yeah, it was fun.
Okay, excellent.
Not a lot of masks. A lot of families with kids. I don't know if 13 will concur, but a lot more families with children than I've ever seen at a con.
Yeah, it was a good thing, and I got to meet a couple creators that I had not met in person. Just to mention, I had not met Jim Starlin in person.
Yeah.
Not Al Milgram, phenomenal guy to talk to. I think I had a blast with him. Jerry Ordway as well.
Oh, cool, excellent.
So he's a very, very nice gentleman. We were talking with him for a while, and yeah, Lee Weeks, awesome artist.
Oh,
Yeah.
excellent.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it was very good.
So-
Who else? Michael
so-
Bolden was there. So yeah, there were
so-
quite a number of people there.
So restraining orders are on the way. Is that what we're saying?
No, not yet.
Well, Terrificon down in Mohegan Sun is always like a murderer's row of creators every single year. They always pull out some really, really good guests. So
All right. Okay.
kudos to Mitch Halleck.
There you go. Okay, so we are back talking about a unique. I'm going to say unique. It's an odd topic this time around, and I'll give you a little bit of a situ. The reason why I kind of thought about this is that we always talk a lot about the Marvel comics of the UK, right?
Yeah.
So this is what we had to put up with in the UK. See if we can get this done for you. There you go. Star Wars Weekly. This is from 1978. It's issue number 21. And the reason why this is kind of like synonymous with anthologies is you get black and white art and you get maybe 10 pages of Star Wars comics. Then you get a Star-Lord storyline, which pretty lasts about 4 pages. Ironically, Chris Claremont and Carmine Infantino. And then finally, you get Tales of the Watcher. Now, this kind of gave me like this is my childhood. The books like this, right? When you couldn't get Marvel comics or DC comics at these times, this is what we get. So anthologies, they're kind of my blood a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, so that's why we went with that. So there you go, a really battered copy of that. I have a couple of these kicking around the house. 10 whole English pence. There you go. Oh, excellent. Cool. So anthologies. What do we know about them? We're going to talk about a few. Which ones spring to mind that we're not going to talk about?
Well, let's go back to the golden age when everything was an anthology. Detective Comics and Action Comics, 8 or 12 pages of 60-page books, and you were getting your daily doses of Batman and Detective Comics, along with Slam Bradley or a bunch of other stuff that no one remembers. Same thing with the Human Torch comics, Captain America comics, everything back in the golden age where there wasn't a paper shortage and they could put 80 pages in an issue, but you'd get 4 or 5, sometimes 6 stories in an issue. And a lot of those characters like Captain America or Human Torch or Submariner, Human Torch and Submariner spin off into their own books from Marvel Comics. Same thing with Action Comics and Superman, and Detective Comics with Batman, and it's the original format. So when we talk about anthologies, there's really none in existence today, but that's the original way that everybody got their comic book heroes. So
I think too that you got to throw in there some annuals, right? If you fast forward in time, where you will get, obviously the main story would be considered the annual, but then you'll get little tidbits of other characters that they're trying to push. Also some primers or samplers, right? So I remember when Image came out, they had their sampler. So things like that would just give you some exposure to characters. You're like, oh, I didn't know they handled that character, or maybe I will try that when #1 comes out.
Yeah, I don't think anybody bought the Wild Dog series. So
I did. I actually
well,
like it.
well, for you, if I remember correctly, he's a little fact about 13th Crusader that nobody knows. But unless you really, really know your TDC history, when the New 52 restarted the DC universe, I know a person who went out and bought all 52 #1s. 13th, do you know who that person is?
Not at all.
Shut up! It was you, you fool. Every single one of them.
That was a variant of me. That was not me.
How long did that last? About 13 seconds.
Pretty much.
Yeah, the New 52. There was probably about 10 good books, and the other 42.
Yeah.
Why?
All those 10 books were bad books. All right. No, the word. Don't send it. If you're going to send hate mail, send it to 13th Crusader. That's great. So anthologies kind of morphed a little bit, didn't they? Because Professor's absolutely right.
Yeah.
You had like the multiple titles in one book. Then they kind of came 13th Detective Comics ended up going with backup stories for a while.
Yep. Definitely with Batgirl and what have you. So
Green Arrow, Nemesis, and all that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The Batman Family run was pretty much an anthology run.
Perfect. That's a good shout. Why didn't I think of that? Damn it. I even have some of those. So now the backup story is kind of making a reoccurrence for DC, definitely. Hence the $5 price mark for some books.
Yeah, and then you can jump into the Silver Age with Marvel when they were doing Tales of Suspense, Tales to Astonish, which was almost like it was just a split book where you have half a story of Captain America, half the issues of Iron Man. But that was done out of necessity because of the agreement that Marvel had with the distributors, where they could only publish like 8 books a month. They wanted to jam their characters, and you want to have as much as you could. So.
And that's a good shout to remember that back then Marvel books were like bi-weekly. So you get, X-Men back in the day was once every 2 months. It wasn't once every month.
Yeah. And that was because of the distribution agreement with, because it was actually DC was distributing Marvel's books.
Yep. Well done.
So
bonkers as that is. Well done. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, how did those chickens came home to roost pretty sharpish. All right. All right. So we're going to talk about three classics. I use the term loosely for my choice. I'm getting buyer's remorse just looking at my book, to be fair. Absolutely. Why? I'm thinking, I have let, I'm no spoilers, right? But I have certainly judged this book by its cover.
It's true.
And that's all I'm going to say till we get there. All right.
I'll save my comments for later.
Oh, please do. Please do. Don't hate me too much. All right. The first one up then, we're going with the Professor's Choice. We are going to go with, I think, possibly a book that does not get as much love as it should, considering when it started, this book was the only place to get solo Wolverine stories before his own book came out. And we're talking about Marvel Comics Presents. This is issue 72 from January 91.
Yeah.
What I like about this is the cover that we've got here shows that the price for this book at the time was $1.25 or 65 pence in the UK. Nowadays, this book ships for the single issue in the region of £35, or if you're feeling industrious, there's a guy selling it on a certain eBay, a certain bidding site, selling issues 72, 73, and 74 for £45 for a lot of them. All right, but generally speaking, what was the deal with Marvel Comics Presents, Professor?
So Marvel Comics Presents was so they wanted to have a book featuring Wolverine, and they brought back the anthology book. A lot of the stuff that I've read about Marvel Comics Presents was the ability for Marvel at the time to showcase new writers and artists with generally BCD list characters that can't carry their own book. So you have the original, like you have 4 stories in an issue, 8 pages each, so it's a little oversized. I think you get like 25 pages or 26 pages a book. But you have the anchor story of Wolverine. So Wolverine was the only feature that was ongoing. And then you would have 2 other features that would do, whether or not it was a 4-parter, a 6-parter, an 8-parter. So that would be a continuing story, which would cycle out. And then you'd get a new character coming in. And then there was always, the last story was always a rotating spot for a standalone 8-pager for just about, it literally could be anybody.
Is it about me? That'd be cool.
It could be literally anybody in the Marvel universe. Yeah. So sorry. This particular issue had the 8-pager backup was Red Wolf, and by Fabian Nicieza, who in 1991 was just kind of getting started around here. But that story was a very good story, which was kind of an 8-page backup to where Red Wolf, who had lost his wolf Lobo, was killed. And you know what? They don't really tell you where Lobo died. It was in a fight with the Bengal, but I can't remember what issue it was in.
Well, it won't be the Cincinnati Bengals.
Would not be. But the reason that I picked this particular issue was because this book is the first part, or the prologue to Weapon X, and the Barry Windsor Smith written and drawn story that carried on. I think it was like a 13-parter or something like that. But this is the origin of Wolverine, right? And something that Chris Claremont never told.
Yeah, who'd have thought that a Wolverine book that Chris Claremont did not write in?
Yeah, and everybody, I think a lot of people actually credit Chris Claremont for writing this story, but it was actually Barry Windsor Smith. And this I think is probably the most important story to come out of Marvel Comics Presents, out of its whole run, and the one that has been copied many times. It's the accepted origin of Wolverine, or of Weapon X, and how he got the adamantium in his skeleton, etc. And it's a story that had up till 1991 had never been told. And there was so much mystery involving Wolverine for years that Claremont just never got around to kind of fleshing out that part. We got a lot of backstory on Logan, but we never actually got, hey, how did he ever get the adamantium? And this is the story. And it was at the time, and I'm sure you guys can remember 1991, this was probably the biggest story going on in Marvel for about 6 months. Right, as the parts came out. And before this, I was never really a Barry Windsor Smith fan. His artwork always kind of jumped off to me, was like ugly, and there was just too much to look at. Now, of course, now that I'm older, I see how beautiful it is, and how just what a master storyteller Barry Windsor Smith is. But this is the reason that I like anthologies, is because you do get multiple characters in a book that you normally wouldn't see. This one has a couple of backups. Has Shanna the She-Devil, which, how many times have you ever seen a Shanna story other than that in the early 70s? And a Daredevil, right?
Daredevil.
So, it's weird because Daredevil he had his own book, but he was going through a lull in 91, I believe.
Well, this is part and parcel of the book, the reason why, right? So you're buying the book for Wolverine, and everybody else that's in it is there to give
pump them up, right?
Yeah. So let me before we go any further, let's give some kudos and some credits out.
Sure.
So, the Weapon X story is Barry Windsor Smith, letters by Jim Novak and Barry Windsor Smith. Shanna is Gerard Jones and Paul Gallosi, which kind of makes me wonder why, because he's like highbrow creators at this point.
Yeah.
Paul Galosi's art's
but see, this is the thing, is Paul Gallosi in 1991 wasn't really doing anything, right? So he was actually coming back. Well, he did a lot of work in Marvel Comics Presents. He did a Man Thing story, and then he does the Shanna stuff, but he wasn't on a regular book. Like, he wasn't a regular artist at this point. And Gerard Jones, we remember him. Maybe he's infamous now, but
I remember him more for his Green Lantern stuff more than
right.
More,
Green
more
Lantern.
Being nice. Daredevils. Sorry, let me give some more details. So Shina's also got Gary Martin on inks, colors by Steve Matson. Daredevils written by Sandy Plunkett, layouts by Sandy, pencils by Dwayne Turner, inks by Chris Ivey, letters by Janice Chan, colors by Gregory Wright. And as you said, Red Wolf is by Fabian Nicieza, who I've interviewed. What a great guy. Penciler is Javier Saltares, who I haven't interviewed, but I'm assuming he's still a good guy. Inks by Mark McKenna, an interesting name.
We've talked to him too.
Yeah, we have. Letters by Michael Heisler and colors by Kelly P. Corvesi. So for me, it makes me pleased to hear you talk about Barry Windsor like that, because you absolutely pinned him when we talked about Machine Man 2020.
Yeah.
back in the early episodes, eh?
Yeah, I mean, opinion hasn't changed really. I mean, it has changed over time, but yeah, I think there are a lot of artists we could talk about now who, when we first started seeing them, I mean, I guess we could call them an acquired taste, right? Like, it's just like, okay, it's not what I'm used to. But then, like Bill Sienkiewicz, or even Jack Kirby to a point. Jack Kirby was like a sock to the jaw. And then
and I must admit, I am on that fence where I personally don't like everything that Jack Kirby's done. Yeah. So that's my kind of. I prefer Ditko over Kirby.
Yeah, definitely his second run with Marvel in the 70s was not nearly as up to par as his other stuff. So, I mean, there is room for criticism everywhere. But if we want to get into the writing for a bit, I actually talked to Don McGregor and Christopher Priest about writing 8-pager versus writing an issue-long story, and Christopher Priest actually had some insight for me that I had never thought about before. He says it's just as hard to write an 8-pager as it is to write a full issue or even a miniseries. He's like, because you have to cram everything into 8 pages, and how do you figure out, the story is the story no matter how long it is, and how do you get the plot, how can you get your idea across in only 8 pages? And he was not a fan of the anthologies, but it was a very interesting conversation. Don McGregor, on the other hand, who I want to say infamously wrote a 25-parter in Marvel Comics Presents on Black Panther, just got to the point that he didn't know how to end it, so he just kept going.
Went to the Chris Claremont School of Writing, then. Excellent.
Yeah, so he just kept going because he couldn't find the end to the story, and I mean, that's a story that Panthers, what's it called? I'll figure out later, but that's
Panther's Quest.
Panther's Quest, yeah, and that was kind of a third part of a trilogy that he wrote, starting with Panther's Rage, and the final part is here in Marvel Comics Presents. But yeah, so I'll shut up now, and you guys can talk about yours, whatever you want. Sorry.
13th, Marvel Comics Presents. Were you a fan?
I had mixed feelings. I remember buying the very first issue off the newsstand, and all I could remember at the time was, which wasn't a secret. Marvel had very big plans for Wolverine. There was always a push for Wolverine.
Yep.
But the struggle was, how do we make that happen? And when Marvel Comics Presents came out, I'm like, here comes the push, right? So whether you loved Wolverine or not, this is where you were going to go to really get the stories for Wolverine, just focusing solely on him. Now, the bonus was, if you want to look at it that way, like what we've been alluding to, are the bonus stories. I wasn't, I got issue 1, I got issue 2, and then I kind of stopped. And then I'm like, okay, it's an anthology, so I can just go back to it whenever, and I'll still get new stories here and there. It wasn't really my go-to thing, and I guess that's the sneaky thing, right? Because now here we are talking about issue 72, and in this one, the Weapon X story, which is part of a 13-part story, is my favorite. It's like, who would expect to see this in the middle of a run like this?
Yeah.
So I guess the lesson learned is, stick with it, because you just never know what's going to pop up.
It's interesting. It's interesting you bring up those early books, because you got to think back. Marvel Comics Presents, especially the Wolverine stuff, early doors, introduced Madripoor.
Right.
Yep.
Brought back Jessica Drew.
Correct.
Who'd been missing in action for God knows how long. She was a private detective. Created Patch.
Yep.
Right.
all these things that we take for granted now when we look at the Marvel universe.
Right.
There's from these little snippets, these little 8 pages. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. There's no doubt that this was a critical run, if you will. I mean, again, Weapon X probably being the biggest that comes out of it, but
definitely
it's a lot of things other than just stories. It's a playground for characters that you don't normally see. It's a playground for creators that don't normally get a chance to work on their craft with characters that they're not accustomed to handling. And then the challenge of, like what Bud said, trying to get this crammed into 8 pages.
Yeah,
so it's a lot of everything in here.
And that's the beat, isn't it? The fact that the 8-page base, you've got to end on that cliffhanger.
Correct.
To get, you can't just say there's 8 pages and you stop halfway through a conversation.
Right. And I can honestly tell you, like, I don't remember reading this specific issue it's been so long, but it was great. Like Shauna the She-Devil, the only other comic I've read of her is her first issue, which I own, and then something in Spidey Super Stories.
Yep.
So other than that, where are you going to see her? So Red Wolf was another one too, where in the pages of Avengers, West Coast Avengers, that's it. And I'm reading this now. I'm like, I actually liked both of those stories.
Yeah. And the only other time you'd ever see these characters in other anthology series, like a Marvel Premiere or Marvel Spotlight or something like that, where they kind of rotate the character in and tell a story. So not really an anthology, but if you look at the overall book where they rotate characters in and out, even though you're getting a full story and issue, it's still kind of an anthology series, right?
Right. And, the other thing is, too, as a reader, you go in here hoping for the best, but maybe not every story in the book is going to be on that level. But whatever, you're still getting it. Like I love Daredevil to death, but I did not like the Daredevil story in here.
That's exactly what you know. Do you know what? I've been reading Daredevil, and Bud knows this, and anyone who's been checking out Comic Crusader's website will know that I've been reading Daredevil, and they'll know how much I'm loving this current run right now. When you compare that run to this, it's like chalk and some other writing implement altogether. It's like, man, this is just by the numbers, and those numbers aren't great numbers. It's terrible.
Yeah.
Well, you got to think of the time frame you're in here too. Is early '90s. This is a year before Marvel shit the bed, went belly up, bankrupt. So this is really kind of the height, or maybe a dearth of ideas, and them trying to figure out what was working. But this particular, like I said, the Barry Windsor Smith story in this is really what Marvel Comics Presents is remembered for. Everything else is really kind of forgettable. So when you said anthologies, this was the first thing that popped in my head.
Cool. It's all good. All good. Just for continuity's sake, we will just have a quick look through. So this is the Barry Windsor Smith stuff. You can see all the great big arc, the dark inks and the dark colours on there. If you can't see Machine Man 2020 in here, look closely. Then you've got Galusi's great line work, and even Gerard Jones, tongue-in-cheek, when she changes, you're going out like that. Why? It's like, well, we've got to look.
Well, I read that page twice.
But there you go. They're shining in all her glories and Jungle Adventures. The aforementioned Daredevil book, which looks absolutely and reads absolutely awful. I had to work out that Daredevil's supposed to be on the helicopter, because how else did you get there? Because there's nothing to swim
I want to know how he was able to read that note.
That's my notes, exactly. On my notes, if I could show you my screen, I've put down. I remember reading a Daredevil book where he was up against Crossbones, and he couldn't. And there was some joke that Daredevil couldn't see who he was fighting because he couldn't read the emblem, and yet he can read this note. I'm like, come on, his supersonic radar isn't that equipped, is it?
No.
To read the impressions of the pen left on the paper. Really?
Right.
Yeah, that was bonkers. I was like, whatever. And then of course, the Red Wolf story there, dealing about loss.
Yeah, I was surprised at how graphic the story was when they killed the wolves and the wolf
Yeah.
cubs.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Robert's got a little dude there, so he's all's well that ends well. There you go.
Yep.
Cool. Excellent. There you go. That's one down. So before we jump onto our next book, it's advert time. Da-da-da. We're getting to the stage now where we haven't had many new adverts for a while. We might just run the advert for this show and see what. No, I'm joking. We're not going to do that.
Old Timers Comic Book Show presents Old Timers Comic Book Show.
Shh. It's the Marvel way of doing it. Don't say anything.
Here, read this note in the dark.
Yeah, if it works for Stanley, it works for us. God damn it! All right, should we go Crisis?
Sure.
All right, here's Crisis in the Toyverse. Cool, lad. Excellent. All right, so one down. I'd say one to go, but it's anthologies, so God knows how many. In fact, there's a fair few in this. I'm not going to lie. This is the 13th choice. I think he picked this because there's 13 stories in it. I'm not sure.
Thank you. More than that.
There's more than that. Yeah.
I'm just going for the joke. Tell you
So did they.
Yeah, Peter didn't hit it half the time, right?
Nope.
Nope. All right. So this is What If Volume 1, number 34. This is from 1982, and it can cost you roughly between £8 to £10. Now, there's a ton of creators in this. This is a bonkers book. So I'll let 13 shout out some of the creators on this. Fred Hembeck's probably the biggest one, right? Right. And then Tom DeFalco's done a couple of things.
Well, he edited the book.
And a whole host of
Milgram's
them
in here, Frank Miller.
Yep. Mark Grunwald.
Right.
Yeah.
Tons of people. It'll take us an hour to go through the credits. So there you go.
All right. 3, 2, 1. Let's start. That's fine.
All right. Let's not. Okay. So 13th. Take it away. What's so special about this What If book?
Well, when you said anthology, this was the first thing that popped to my mind. And then I'm like, I think this is going to be awesome because this has to be a record for the number of different titled or situation stories in here. And
All right.
What If was to me, I absolutely love the What If run. And when this issue came, I'm like, what is going on here? So the cover tells you right away, that this is going to be a very much offbeat book. But it still satisfies the question of the title, which is what if. So we all know about the multiverse. What if there was no multiverse? You wouldn't have this title for sure. Comics maybe wouldn't be as exciting, but sometimes Marvel would go to an extent of trying to make light of certain situations. So here you go, and they're just going with that question, what if? Um, I was cracking up reading this thing because, like, right off the bat, it's like, what if the Fantastic Four were bananas? So there's
Huh?
some, to me, there was some innuendos in there if you look at Reed Richards. Um,
Oh yes.
yeah. So, you know, certain things made me crack up. I forget his how to pronounce the last name. Hembeck.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
know, he always did like those hilarious Marvel things here and there. He's still drawing today. So, yeah, awesome. Uh, I'm just gonna highlight some of the ones I liked, like what if Captain America chose to remain nomad?
Yeah.
The fact that he's there holding a comic book, what reprints again?
Yeah.
Because you know he's been there and done that. The
Mhm.
Rick Jones Captain Marvel situation. I just finished reading the Captain Marvel run. I hate Rick Jones. I I was almost like if they had reached out to the fans and said, "What would you like to say?" I'd be like, "What if Rick Jones was not part of the Captain Marvel run?"
And
But
therein lies a question. If you had a question for what if, what would it be?
well, that would definitely be one of them. What if there was no such thing as an alternate reality or multiverse?
Well, then what would all today's comic books be talking about? Because every publisher's doing multiverses.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. It just shows you like, and we've talked about this before in Definitive Crusade when the Flash went to another world and actually met the Jay Garrick Flash.
Mm.
Everything since that day, like the multiverse has been done to death, and it just seems to keep growing and growing and growing. Um, so yeah, it can be kind of hard to follow at points, but it could also be very interesting. But what I appreciate about this issue, though, is that it makes light of that. And we're talking
Mm.
1982. They already knew what was going on with alternate realities and what have you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm a sucker for Ghost Rider. So in here, seeing the Watcher all tatted up with a cigarette and a vest on made me laugh. Um, they should make him appear more often like that, to be honest. Ghost Baby, I'll spare you the voice.
Well, to be fair, we've heard your Aqua Baby. Do you have a Ghost Baby voice in your repertoire?
I'm sure I could come up with something, but I won't do it today. Not until Ghost Baby has its own run.
So...
Yeah, but
It's coming. That's
yeah, I can
coming.
imagine.
oh yeah, you
Yeah.
know it's in the works.
Coming out in November.
I just want to know if Ghost Rider, if he gets heartburn, does it still give him colic? Like grape water stuff. Is that
Hmm
is that baby Ghost Rider's like mortal enemy? No. Oh no, grape water! No,
Couple of things
quells the
too.
demon inside.
With this issue, you get questions of like, seriously, like if you read it in from today's perspective, like, what if everyone who had ever been an Avenger remained an Avenger? How is that an alternate reality?
Yeah.
Uh, so you know, the same thing with the Phoenix. If she had lived, Elektra had survived. So these are things that later on down the road were explored in what if stories.
I like these snippets for me the best bits. I mean that top one right there, that just screams today.
Hmm
What if him had married her, and then you've got him, her, them.
hmm
Yeah.
It's like, welcome to our world, guys. There it was, 1982. We knew it. It
hmm
was coming. There you go. So I mean, some of these little snippety ones for me, they're the steal of the show, definitely.
Yeah, I think my favorite one, honestly, in the book is what if the Watchers in all the realities watch the Watchers?
Oh yeah, yeah, crazy. I didn't get this page at all. I was kind of like, I'm missing
That was
something.
that was like an inking trick. You
Hmm
know, what if
How?
I don't? Well, because Yellow Hulk, well, blue thing. I don't
think
know. The Power
blue
Man,
things.
the Power Man white one. It was. I was like, ooh, that's doesn't the optic
Yeah,
on that today not good.
yeah. I just the Hulk screen. He doesn't even change.
I think I think he was supposed to be yellow. I think they inked him wrong.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Or
There's
he's
one.
supposed to be scared. Like I don't want to fight you. Yeah.
I'm
Oh right. I get it now. Oh, yeah,
th-
but you're right. The Power Man one. Ooh, stinker.
Yeah, the what if Wonder Man were a woman and Power Man were a girl, and I
That's
love that
my
little note.
favorite. That's my
Yeah,
favorite, definitely.
where the
Let's
hey,
see
you
if
can
we can
get
find
sued
it.
for this from the competitors.
There's yours, the Watcher's watching the Watcher.
Yep.
There it is at the bottom. What if Wonder Man were a woman? And the irony in this is that's why these characters were created.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, all the DC versions. Wonder Man that was created in this version is
Right.
like, and the kind of DC kicked up a fuss saying it's about Wonder Woman. And they said, no, it's not, because we all know Wonder Man's got like a long history.
Right.
So, which then DC created Power Girl as a kind of nudge, wink, wink to a Luke Cage type thing.
Yeah, and then what if Black Bolt were a rock star? So that's obviously a shout out
Yeah.
to the Rolling Stones. That would be an awesome concert to go to, no doubt about that. I'm always up for Black Bolt jokes, and here you're gonna find a few.
You can say that again.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, killing me.
Yeah, no, there's some good ones in here that were very very funny. But again, the Watcher's watching the Watcher. I think the Obnoxio the Clown made me laugh too, because they not only did they take a swipe at DC with Wonder Man and Luke Cage, they did it with Batman and Superman here as a clown.
Yeah.
So that got a chuckle out of me.
I like those 2 pages. Those 2 are my also up there. Yeah, cool.
Yeah. But yeah, this is just, again, it's just to make light of some things that have happened, or some questions that fans, may have brought up or joked around, or even the creators. I mean, the cover says it all.
Yeah.
That this is going to be an offbeat issue.
Well, this issue was made to sort of like reflect Mad Magazine or
Right.
or Crazy. That I think that was the Marvel publication that was coming out at the time. That was actually the one that had Obnoxio the Clown in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then and Cracked. That was like all those funny mags were all being published here. When did this come out? Like 1982.
82, yeah.
Yeah.
So, do you have a favorite in this, Professor? Because I mean, you're
No.
our Marvel guy, so we kind of reading this with like fire coming out of your eyes, like, why are you doing this? Why? Oh God, why?
I'm gonna. So Mike loves What If. I don't really. I mean, I loved it at the point when it was coming out, because it made you think more about the storylines that are being done. Now, when you look back on it, it's just like I'm reading that and I'm like, wow, the 2010 Marvel did a whole story on this, and so it's actually canon now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they really mined all of their ideas and got them from What If, and you can really go back and just kind of cherry pick any issue from the first volume of What If, and it became like a huge storyline down the road, whether or not it was Captain America and Hydra, or so anything else, literally. And it's just made me actually kind of mad. So it's not that a fact that I hate What If, but it's like I hate Marvel for having to mine the stories to actually get real stories.
Yeah, I mean, the first title of the run, What If Spider-Man joined the Fantastic Four?
Right.
Done.
See? Yep.
If the Hulk had the brain of Bruce Banner.
Yep.
Done.
Yep. You can just go down the list. It is really like, wow, someone really did that story. You could tell that they just didn't have an idea, and that to me, it just kind of it leaves a sour taste in my mouth, I guess. So
yeah,
right.
What if the Hulk became a barbarian? Because we've not seen that before.
So, what would be your then? We've heard 13s. What if there's no multiverse, and what if Rick Jones didn't exist, and all that sort of stuff? What would be yours, Professor? What would be your what if question?
What if the creators at Marvel had an original idea?
Satirical. Very well.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. It's the one. I quite liked. I didn't mind this book. I'm not gonna lie. I didn't mind it at all. Some of the things were just a little bit daft. It just made me sort of like shake my head. All the Avengers thing was right. Hiccups with Black Bolt was kind of What if Galactus ate the Earth? So what? Is pretty much my answer on that one. I don't know why Dazzler gets a lot of love. What if Dazzler was a comedian? What if Dazzler was a lawyer? You know, what if Dazzler actually had her own book at that point?
If you go back a page, the what if that the page that Al Milgrom did, this one, yeah. What if Captain Marvel hadn't died? He's flying around space like he would normally do. What if Phoenix still lived? Oh, they'd be her and Cyclops would be going on a date like they normally would. That one I actually thought was kind of funny, and it was just because nothing changed because they stayed alive.
Right.
Other than that, as I say, I think I quite liked certain bits. I like the Willie Lumpkin Herald to Galactus. He delivers letters. Your planet is now under siege. Oh, thanks. Cheers. Hadn't noticed. Cheers. There was some bits that were Cyclops in his ears out, his energy beams out of his ears. Daft. The Wonder Man, Power Man one were the big ones for me.
I thought the last page was funny. The last bit was with what if Stan Lee read this book?
Yeah. And I
thought that was funny.
I think towards the end they also do the same joke that they did at the beginning, because they said, "What if Spider-Man married Spider-Woman?" And he said, "Oh, I found out. I was going to marry Black Widow, but I found out what happens at the honeymoon, so I said no." And then the very last one is, there she goes. What if Spider-Man married the Black Widow? It's like, come on, guys, we've seen this one already.
Yeah, there's one in here too called She-Hulky by Stern and Austin that reminded me of the comic strips I used to read in the newspapers of Dagwood.
Yep.
I don't know if anybody remembered those, but so they did it in that style, which I thought brought back a lot of memories of me waiting for the Sunday paper to read Dagwood.
Well, that's what made me think of like Mad Magazine, because the Mad Magazine always used to do funny comic strips based in the styles of the artists from the comic strips. So there was a lot of copycats going around.
Yeah, and shout out to Obnoxio, the Obnoxio Wolverine who could open up a dozen 6-packs in one slice. So he should go for the 13th and break the record. I
think the real Wolverine can do that. Same deal, right?
I got to ask you guys a question. Do you think that as a comic book, this is the record for the most anthology type ideas in one single issue?
Yes. Yeah,
it's got to be.
Yeah. It's got to be. If it's not, I mean, some of them are half thought out, not full stories. Could you really say? Could you really say they're anthologies, or could you just say they're adverts? I don't know.
But Johnny, you didn't give us your what if.
Oh, right. Okay. What if? It's probably being done. It was probably being done. What if? I haven't got one. I don't think I've got one. Let me come back to you. What if? What I was thinking? What if Uncle Ben lived? But I know that's been done.
Yeah.
What if? I'm trying to think of something.
What if Peter Parker married Deborah Whitman?
Yes. There you go. Yes.
Would you buy that issue?
Hell yes.
I was gonna say, what if Johnny didn't review a Batman book on this podcast? But hey, we know what's coming next is not a Batman book.
I don't always do Batman.
I'm joking. It was a joke.
Right, that's it. Next episode, all Batman. Just saying, put it out there. All Batman. You started this. There.
It's coming up 2 weeks. The all Batman episode.
All the Marvel listeners go.
Where's the Obnoxio Batman? Because I'll review that one.
Yeah, maybe. I am going DC for my choice. So it's my choice next, isn't it?
Yeah. Unfortunately.
All right. So.
I just remembered I had something to do.
Yeah. I'm going to go and watch paint dry. Okay. So everybody who listens to this show, whether it's on TDC or whether they've heard me on No Prize back in the day, all know that I have a delectation for the fishnets. There you go. So when we talked about anthologies, if we're going to do Marvel Comics version, it seemed only fair we did Action Comics. And Action Comics has been around for ages. Currently in the 1000s, all right, which is a bit of a steal a little bit, I think. But I suppose the twist on Action Comics over MCP is that this was 48 pages, so more pages, but it's every week an Action Comics would drop. And there are several characters in this. So you've got Black Canary, Green Lantern, Superman, Deadman, Secret Six, and Wild Dog. Very much like MCP. Superman was the holding fulcrum by which everybody else would rotate around. Great place to get some early Nightwing stories.
Yep.
Great place to get some Canary, some Green Arrow, some Green Lantern before he got his new launch series later in the 80s. So I'll give you some stats for this. So it came out in 88. This lovely cover you can get for the princely sum of £3.49 to £10. Very exact on that one. Credits. This shed loads of credits, but we'll go with Canary. Stories written by Sharon Wright, penciled by Randy Duburk, inks by Pablo Marcos, who went on to draw Star Trek comics, if I remember correctly. Letters by Steve Hayen, colors by Gene D'Angelo. I will say this: despite the cover, there are no fishnets in this book. Already down a happy customer from me, I'm afraid. You've got Dead Man, written by Mike Barron, Dan Jurgens. Early Dan Jurgens worked for 13th Crusader. Inks by Tony Dzunga. Letters again by Steve Haney, Liz Berube. I'm going with that on colours. Secret Six, Martin Pascoe, Dan Spiegel, Carrie Spiegel, and Carl Gafford. I wrote Gifford the first time. Obviously, my head's still on football. And then the Superman was Roger Stern, Kurt Swan, John Beatty, Bill Oakley, and Tom Zuko. And then there are some Secret Six, but by that, and Wild Dog. But by the time I got to them, I was bored and I was done. So I'm penning my own book, really. This is, what can I say?
This is really good entertainment for us. You have no idea.
Yeah. Cool, brilliant. The Canary book feels like it's kind of the Longbow Hunters style for Green Arrow and Canary. The art's not Mike Grell standard, but it's up there. It's kind of trying to do a mature theme, which is these guys all about at that time. Other than that, yeah, it's a hard pass from me. And I picked it. Oh man, I only picked it for the cover. I like the cover.
Thanks, Johnny.
Hey,
you didn't like the Dead Man chapter where Nancy Reagan punched out Riza Gorbachev?
I thought I was back on What If Land, to be honest. 13th, save me. Surely you, a fellow DC fan, can help save my choice.
So I just sold this issue a few months ago, as I did with several Action Comics. But
not to me, why did you let me know you were selling it? I could have bought
it. Brian Bolland, who did the cover, obviously for those that know who he is, drew The Killing Joke. So yeah, really is the best thing about this book. It did get a lot of attention, where the running gag was where Black Canary got her uniform modified, and the fans were not wild about it, and they voiced their opinions and concerns, and the creators just had fun with it. Like, yeah, we made a mistake, but they turned that mistake, if you will, and really made fun of themselves. And this was the result. And I think that was a really good thing to show the fans, like, we listen to you. And yeah, we're laughing along with you. You guys are right. So here we are. We're going to bring the fishnets back, which is probably the most exciting thing here. And the way she's standing there holding the costume, burning it, is the joke. Now, to me, they could have gone a step further, make this a wraparound cover with her putting the match to the cover. But that's after reading the stories inside, of course. But Green Arrow, Black Canary stories, again, if it wasn't Mike Grell, it's a hard sell for me. I love the pairing of the two. But, this story really didn't, catch my attention like that. Dead Man is a funny character to handle, right? Because there are awesome Dead Man stories out there, and there are truly dead Man stories out there. There's like really no happy in between place with Dead
You're
Man.
going to say that, you're going to say there's no happy medium.
Yeah, exactly. I was. I
Yeah,
was.
that's
You know, but you know, Dan Jurgens, I love his art, you know, and you know, to draw real life people back then, you know, with former President Reagan and Gorbachev, you know, yeah, some other artists may have had a challenge with that, but obviously not for one with Jurgens' talent.
Well, this is before Jurgens became massive on Superman.
Yep, that's correct.
So very much like MCP, this book could be used for up and coming writers and artists.
Right.
Mhm.
It was right. It was a springboard
Yeah.
for talent. The Secret Six, you know, maybe for today, for the folks on the New Timers comic book show, they're only going to talk about the Bat villains getting together and Amanda Waller.
Mhm.
But the Secret Six was originally a run of espionage group, or if you have what have you. So,
Mhm.
a long time ago, and we were talking Silver Age. Honestly, the story in here reminded me of that, but it also put me to sleep. So when I
Yep.
woke up, you know, I was happy to read the Wild Dog story in here. Wild Dog's just one of those obscure characters where you could say like, yeah, you know, this guy is got that Punisher attitude and is willing to go the extra mile, or than the other character DC had trotting around with the vigilante.
Mhm.
But something about Wild Dog, just his attitude was a little bit different, I felt, than the vigilante, and he just really didn't care. And I think you'll see that in here. So if you've never read Wild Dog or never read the miniseries that DC had out, and this is your first taste of reading Wild Dog comics, there's more of this in his own books, especially in these days, where you know this guy, yeah, he's trying to help people and things like that, but he doesn't care who's in the way, and he has that dark personality. And in reading this story, when he captures the commander,
Mhm.
straps their own bombs to him, pretty much says, you know, I'll detonate you. I don't care. You know, he's still trying to get more information. So yeah, he's very, very aggressive. Kind of a dark character. Again, very, very obscure. Nothing like what the DC shows portray him to be in Arrow.
I was going to bring that up.
Yeah, night and day, literally night and day. So don't rule out Wild Dog comics. You know, trust me, it's there's not that many of them, but when you do find them, it's going to be a similar thing to what you read in this issue. But you know, again, I at the end of the day, the best thing about this issue, as I guess we'll all agree, is the cover. It is an iconic cover. It is a well-known cover.
Hey, check out who wrote that letter. Do you think that's the guy? That is the real one?
Yeah.
You think that's
If you
really
notice,
him?
yeah, notice next to the next letter is Joe Staton too. So
Yeah. Look at that.
is that Bob Rozakis too?
Yeah.
Where you get?
I've gotten somewhere.
These are all shill letters.
You think?
Yeah.
You're gonna be like that then. Spoil sport. Letters. All right.
If you go to the next page, Johnny, you'll see the advert for a story that we did speak about.
Really?
Yep. There you go. We officially reviewed Batman on this show. Someone will live, someone will die. You will decide.
Yeah. Look who else wrote. Was this the letter on the second page too?
Hang on, I've come off that a sec. Oh man, 2 seconds. Let me.
That's all right.
Who wrote this? Can you?
Bridwell. E something Bridwell. He's a comic book guy too.
Oh yeah, E. Nelson Bridwell, Oklahoma City.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. That's what I would call a shill letter page. You have like 4 comic creators all.
There weren't comic creators at the time. Well, maybe they were. All right. So now that we've had 2 DC fans look at this book and absolutely pan it.
Yeah, I gave credit to the Wild Dog story, so just for the record.
Oh yeah. Okay, fair enough. I gave credit to Canary, so.
So I mean, here's what I'll say about it. My DC history starts post-Crisis, okay, and so Action Comics weekly was my first exposure to a lot of different DC characters that I hadn't been exposed to before. So I think that Black Canary story might have been my first exposure to Green Arrow. I don't think I've ever read anything, because I didn't read Longbow Hunters. And then, Dead Man, that was definitely my first Dead Man story that I read. And unfortunately, not the last story I ever read about Dead Man. The Secret Six story. Now, the Secret Six story I remember reading when it first came out, and it was kind of confusing a little bit because it wasn't a superhero story, right? Now that I can look back on it, it had really kind of like a Challenges of the Unknown or Blackhawk kind of flavor to it, kind of like some of those old serial type group cast that no one's the main character, kind of,
Yeah.
And then the Green Lantern story was your typical superhero fare, and the Wild Dog story seemed to me to be DC's answer to the Punisher, and kind of those in that vein. And not like Vigilante, I don't think really was kind of Punisher-esque, but I think Wild Dog was very much so.
Yeah, agreed. Right.
So this was really kind of my first exposure to a ton of different DC characters throughout the run. But let's call it what it was. Really was a failed experiment, right?
Yeah.
They wanted to make the big anniversary when Action hit 600 was for it to make it weekly and kind of go back to the golden age, what we talked about it at the beginning of the podcast, where it was an anthology series, and it didn't really work. I think but 13 mentioned before that 48 pages at $1.50 a week would really that ding the budget of a lot of kids collecting, right?
Right. And it came to a point where it was like either I get this or I get all the other stuff that I want to get. As much as I hated to drop this book after the 600, it was really, really hard. I'm like, I'm going to have to go back and get these at some point.
And, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this experiment didn't really even last a whole year, right? I think it was like 36 or 37 issues before it went back to monthly.
Right.
Am I right?
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, Professor, I remember tons of Action Comics on the newsstand because whatever didn't sell the week before, now you got them mixed in with the stuff that's coming out the next week.
Right.
I remember that. So it was like, now you're going to start cherry picking which one you want.
Yeah, but look at it, look at it this way: if you missed a month of issues, right?
Yep.
So instead of spending your $1 on the next Wolverine book or something, now you have to spend $6 to get 4 issues.
Right.
Yeah. So it was a failed experiment at the time, but I really kind of think that the market really kind of needs an anthology series to kind of promote new characters and new creators. I don't know if the market today could really handle it, or if anybody really cares about it. I know they tried relaunching Marvel Comics Presents a few years ago and it didn't go anywhere. So,
but who would be the mainstay now, though? If you think about it, Marvel Comics Presents was about Wolverine plus others.
Yeah.
The DC version, Superman only gets 2 pages every week.
This is where we kind of clamor a little bit, and we kind of bitch a bunch about characters that really kind of need room to breathe and try to find an audience, and that Marvel or DC or whoever, DC's better at it than Marvel, but Marvel will give something 2 or 3 issues and then cancel it before it ever finds an audience. And I think an anthology series like that might be something that would have give new life to a character, say like Mosaic. Remember Mosaic, who they tried to throw out there and sell 4 or 5 years ago, that after 7 issues just got canceled and we never heard from them again. But something like maybe like a Spider-Gwen, something that or something like that really they keep having these failed launches, right? They relaunch the book and then they try to relaunch it again next year.
Hey, wait a minute, that's Captain Marvel you're describing.
I knew that when I was saying it. So
you can't knock Captain Marvel. It is consistently one of Marvel's current best books.
Well, it is now after 7 relaunches. It's been. I mean, this current iteration of the book has got the longest print run of it since 30 years ago.
So
50 years ago.
I like the original Miss Marvel series. So
Yeah, I mean, if you could also throw in too, and I know it's a little more in recent times where a lot of indie publishers rely and live on anthologies because
Yeah.
you really sometimes you really just have to go out with the attitude of you get one shot to get the reader's attention in a market that's flooded with a whole bunch of other books and obviously competing against the big two. So the anthology is very vital for these guys.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. If it was like, what if Marvel came out with a new anthology book, and the main character wouldn't be Wolverine anymore? We would have Deadpool, right? And have Deadpool have an 8-pager, and then you can do any other character in the Marvel universe
What's
as a
wrong with
backup.
Sauron of the Savage Land? Why doesn't he have a run?
I would not buy
That's
that
a
in $1
joke.
million. I would not buy that in $1 million. Well, I would not buy a Deadpool book. I just
So okay, and I said that because of everybody buys Deadpool or whatever, but would we do an anthology if it was Spider-Man as the first story? You already have 3 or 4 Spider-Man books. Who would you put in as the anchor?
Deborah
that
Whitman.
was my question. No, it would not be Deborah Whitman, although she would get a feature every now and again. See, it would be. I would have a little story on the side. Where are they now? The characters that have come and gone in our heroes' lives.
I would do maybe an 8-page like a Rocket Raccoon regular, and have him anchor the book, and then have a couple of backups.
Flash Thompson. Oh wait, that's been done.
Yeah.
I would probably see Wolverine was a massive. He was a massive fan. Everyone loved him, but he just didn't have a book. So what we're looking for is a character that everybody loves but doesn't have a book right now.
Ghost Rider. That's one.
Let's go. Don't the last Ghost Rider book. Ooh, stinky.
Well, it's buried. Terrible. I don't know. So it would be, I would maybe Rocket Raccoon. I kind of think because he's like in the movies and but he doesn't have his own book. But he did have his own book, which was okay.
Yeah, well, it got off to a rocky start. So,
Mockingbird.
Mockingbird, right? Because the Mockingbird run was really, really good and short-lived.
Because it wasn't in line with Marvel's
ideology.
Yeah. What was that run? Was it Solo Avengers? That was another anthology, right?
Yep. Solo Avengers was a Hawkeye book with a backup of any other Avenger.
Right.
So that was cool. I think that I think that the market needs something like that to kind of keep, I think, interest.
It would stop people buying overpriced annuals with that don't deliver quality. So it's fine. Yeah. Right. There you go. Anthologies are us. Don't pick up Action Comics is the message for today. As always, thank you to the Professor. Thank you, 13.
Thank you.
Of course.
We'll be back for another show in a couple of weeks. Rest assured, it won't be all about Batman. So all you all you Marvel comic fans, don't despair. I'm sure we can put some Marvel in there. But well, hey ho. Even if it is what Marvel characters should be Batman. So,
somehow I feel like that was a dig at Moon Knight, but I wasn't going to say it.
Oh, not Moon Knight. What's the other one from the Squadron Supreme? Nighthawk.
Nighthawk. Yeah.
There you go. That was the one I was going for. But that's cool. All right, gentlemen. Thank you very much. Everyone, don't forget to check out the UCPN for all your favorite podcasts, including Professor.
No Prize Podcast, all about Marvel comics and other parts of the the Marvel universe, like Disney Plus.
So you'll be talking about the What If cartoon?
We did. New episode drops on Tuesday, and when we've covered the first episode of What If.
There you go.
Nice.
Cool. Yeah. Excellent. And of course, TDC. the Definitive Crusade for everything that's DC in between. And for you indie lovers, don't forget to tune in tomorrow for a live Flipside Focus where we're going to be talking to writer-creator David Papose of going to the chapel fame about his new Kickstarter. So there you go.
Nice.
All right, there you go. Gentlemen, adios, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks after more preseason games.
Oh, yes. We'll talk about it then.
Can't wait. Yeah, hooray.
Go Fins. Adios.
Peace.
See ya.